said the lonely rancher to the woman beaten for giving birth to two girls. The wind came low and hard across the plains, carrying dust and a memory of rain that never quite reached the ground. It combed through the dry grass, whistling against the barbed wire that stretched to the horizon. Elias Carter rode with his collar up, hat pulled low, his shadow long and lonely on the hardpan. The year was 1872, and this part of New Mexico territory was a place that forgot to forgive. He'd been riding since dawn, checking the fence line that marked what little was left of his ranch. The wire was sagging in places, a coyote carcass tangled in one post, the smell of rock curling through the air. He nudged his horse onward, murmuring softly, "Keep moving, Scout. Ain't no point lingering." His voice sounded strange to his own ears, hoarse and used. Words didn't have much company out here, not since the winter his wife and baby boy died. He'd buried them beneath a cottonwood that refused to leaf again. Sometimes he sat there at dusk, waiting for the wind to speak her name. It never did. All it brought was dust and silence. As he turned toward the ridge, lightning cracked over the mountains, jagged and white. Storm was coming from the south. He could smell it, taste it, feel it pressing against the sky. He should have headed home then, but something made him stop. A sound, thin, sharp, carried faint on the wind. A scream, not the cry of a bird or beast, but a woman's. He froze in the saddle, scanning the hills. The sound came again, shorter this time, desperate. He kicked his horse into a gallop, following the echo until it led him to a sagging shack half sunk into the mud. Smoke rose from a cracked chimney. The door hung off its hinges. He dismounted and moved slow, shotgun drawn. The smell hit him first, blood, whiskey, and fear. Inside, the place was wrecked. A table overturned, glass shattered, the remains of fire flickering low. And on the floor, beneath a torn blanket, lay a woman. She was small, her hair dark with blood, dress ripped at the sleeve. Beside her, a baby whimpering in a basket of straw, and a little girl, no more than 3, stood barefoot, eyes wide and shining in the dim light. Elias crouched low. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "you hurt bad." The woman stirred but didn't answer. Her lip was split, one eye swollen near shut. When he reached for her, she flinched hard, pulling the child closer. "I ain't here to hurt you," he said. "Name's Elias Carter. You need a doctor." Her voice was a whisper, cracked from crying. He's gone. Said I was cursed." Elias looked around. The walls were streaked with mud and blood. "Who did this?" "My husband," she said, the word trembling. "He beat me for birthing girls. Said the Lord took his sons on account of my sin." Her breath came in gasps. "Said he'd kill me if I ever showed my face in town again." Elias's jaw tightened. He'd seen men like that before, mean with whiskey, meaner with God. He holstered his gun and reached for the baby instead, wrapping her in his coat. "You can't stay here." The woman tried to rise, but her legs gave out. Elias lifted her, light as a sack of grain. She struggled weakly. "No, he'll come back." "He can try," Elias muttered, carrying her through the doorway into the gathering storm. The rain came down in sheets by the time he reached his horse. He helped her up behind him, the girls bundled close. The thunder rolled like cannon fire across the plains. The ride back to his ranch was long and cruel, the cold cutting through his coat. Every time the horse stumbled, he felt her flinch against his back. Halfway home, she spoke again. Why are you helping me?" Elias didn't look back. "'Cause I couldn't leave you there." The words came easy, but they cut deep. He hadn't been able to save his own family from sickness. Hadn't saved the life that mattered most. Maybe helping this woman was a fool's way of paying an old debt. When they reached the ranch, the place looked even lonelier than before. 2 barns, one leaning, and a house that hadn't seen a lamp lit in weeks. He carried her inside, laid her on the bed that once belonged to his wife. The sheets were clean but cold. He stoked the fire, poured water into a basin, and washed her cuts. She watched him with wary eyes. "You're alone here." "Reckon so," he said. "You rest now. Tomorrow we'll see about fetching a doctor." But she shook her head weakly. "He'll find me first." He said nothing to that. He just fed the fire and listened to the wind pushing at the shutters. For the next 2 days, the storm didn't let up. Rain turned the ground to mire, and thunder stalked the hills like a restless spirit. Elias worked in silence, feeding the livestock, fetching water. Cooking brought the woman barely touched. The little girl followed him everywhere, shy but curious. Her name was Clara. The baby's name, he learned later, was Rose. On the third morning, Mara woke fully, her voice still soft but her eyes clearer. "Mara Lynn," she said when he asked her name. "We came from Silver Hollow." He worked the mine there when he worked at all. Elias nodded, setting a pot of beans near the fire. "You got family there?" "None that'll have me." He figured as much. "Then you'll stay here till you're strong." Mara looked down at her hands, thin and trembling. "You don't even know me." "Don't need to," he said simply. She studied him a long moment, as though searching for cruelty she'd come to expect in men. Finding none, she nodded faintly and began to eat. Days passed. The rain eased, then cleared. Elias fixed fences, chopped wood, and tried not to watch her too closely. But she moved through his house like a ghost rediscovering form, sweeping floors, tending the baby, humming tunes half remembered from somewhere better. Sometimes he caught her staring at the open plains like they were a thing that could swallow her whole. He didn't ask questions. He learned silence was its own kind of kindness. Then came the first Sunday after the storm. Elias rode into town for supplies. The saloon was busy, the air thick with smoke and talk. As soon as he walked in, the noise quieted. Men looked up from their cards. "Carter," said the barkeep, wiping a glass. "Heard you been keeping company up at that ranch." Elias ignored him, ordered flour, sugar, and lamp oil. But the whispers followed. That the woman Hank Lynn tossed out? Fellas lost his mind, talking and another man's wife. He turned to leave, but someone blocked the door. Hank Lynn himself. He was broad-shouldered, beard patchy, eyes red from drink. "You got something that belongs to me, Carter." Elias's hand went to his belt, resting near the revolver, but not drawing it. "You mean the woman you near beat to death?" Hank sneered. "She's my wife. Ain't your place to judge." "She's breathing now. That's judgment enough." A murmur rippled through the room. Hank's hand twitched near his holster. Elias didn't blink. "Go home," Elias said low, "before you make a mistake you can't bury." Hank spat at his boots and pushed past him, shouting as he went, "You'll regret crossing me, rancher." The saloon doors swung shut behind him. The men inside went back to their cards, voices low again. Elias holstered his gun and left without another word. By the time he reached the ranch, dusk was settling in soft violet and uncertain. Mara was on the porch, rocking the baby to sleep. Clara played with a wooden horse Elias had carved earlier that day. He tied off his horse and nodded toward the hills. "Storm's come again." Mara looked up. "He knows where we are, doesn't he?" Elias didn't answer right away. He poured himself coffee, dark and bitter, then said, "Let him come." That night the wind howled through the cracks again, the kind of sound that made animals restless and men uneasy. Elias sat by the fire, cleaning his rifle. Mara lay awake in the next room, whispering lullabies to her girls. When the lamp burned low, he walked outside. The sky was heavy with clouds. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. He could almost feel eyes on him, out beyond the fence line where shadows bled into the dark. He rested his hand on the rifle stock and looked toward the horizon. "You want trouble, you'll find it here," he muttered to the wind. Behind him, the door creaked open. Mara stood there, wrapped in his coat, her hair loose around her face. "You think he'll come tonight?" Elias nodded once. Men like him don't rest easy when they've been shown what they are. She stepped closer, the firelight catching her face. Still bruised, still fragile, but no longer broken. "I don't want anyone else dying because of me." He looked at her then, really looked. "You didn't do the breaking, ma'am. You just survived it." For a long moment, they said nothing. The wind pressed against them both, carrying the scent of rain and gun oil. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer. "If he rides in tonight, I'll be ready." But you best stay with the girls." She nodded, eyes glistening. "And if you don't come back—" Elias gave a faint smile, weary but true. "Then tell him I did something right for once." He went back inside, checked the windows, fed the fire one last time. The girls were asleep, huddled together under a wool blanket. He watched them a moment longer than he meant to, something stirring in his chest he hadn't felt in years, a sense of purpose, maybe even peace. Outside, thunder rumbled again, closer now, the kind that rolled deep in a man's bones. The air thickened, alive with the promise of what was coming. Elias sat near the door, rifle across his knees, eyes fixed on the dark. The wind carried faint sounds, a creak of saddle leather, the distant snort of a horse. He exhaled slowly. "Sometimes," he whispered, "the storm don't pass. It just finds you." Lightning flashed over plains, revealing 3 riders far off, their silhouettes cutting through the night. Then darkness swallowed them whole. Inside, Mara stirred but didn't wake. Elias chambered around and waited, the old ache in his shoulder flaring like a ghost. The rain began again, soft and steady, tapping on the roof like a clock counting down. And in that moment, the lonely rancher knew the quiet wouldn't last till dawn. The night broke open with thunder. Elias had been waiting for it. The sound of hooves tearing through mud, voices slurred with liquor and hate. By the time he stepped out onto the porch, lightning had split the sky wide enough to show 3 riders cutting across the ridge. Hank Lynn's voice carried above the wind, raw and ugly. "Come on out, Carter. You got what's mine." Elias didn't answer. He thumbed the rifle's hammer back, feeling the metal catch beneath his calloused thumb. The rain came down hard now, running cold over his neck, soaking the boards under his boots. He could see Mara's pale face framed in the window behind him, eyes wide, baby clutched tight to her chest. Another voice shouted, "Ain't worth dying for her, old man." Elias fired first. The shot cracked like God's own wrath, and one rider toppled sideways into the mud. The others scattered, their horses screaming. Hank fired back blind, bullets tearing through porch posts. Splinters flew. The air stank of powder and rain. Elias ducked, chambered another round, waited. He'd fought Indians once, out on the Pecos line. He knew patience. The next flash of lightning showed Hank trying to circle the corral. Elias raised the rifle again. The gun kicked, and Hank's horse shrieked, throwing him into the muck. Then silence, broken only by the storm. Elias stepped down from the porch, slow, rifle steady. Hank was on his knees, mud streaking his beard, blood on his cheek. "Get up," Elias said. Hank spat, eyes wild. "You think you're a hero? She's mine." Elias leveled the gun. "She's breathing because I found her. That's all that matters." Hank stared at the barrel, chest heaving. "You gonna shoot an unarmed man?" Elias thought about it. Thought about the marks on Mara's face, the way she flinched at shadows. The urge burned through him like whiskey, but something colder held him still. He lowered the rifle. "You ain't worth the bullet. Ride and don't come back." Hank rose, shaking, limping to where his friend's horse had bolted. "You'll pay for this," he hissed, and staggered into the rain. Elias watched him vanish into the dark, then turned toward the house. Mara met him at the door, trembling. "You should have killed him." "Wouldn't change what's been done," he said. He brushed mud from his sleeve. "We can't stay here. He'll bring more men next time." She nodded, silent. The baby began to cry then, a thin wail swallowed by the wind. Elias felt it cut right through him, small and helpless and alive. He hadn't heard a child cry in this house since the night his own son went cold. By dawn, they were already loading the wagon. Elias packed flour, jerky, blankets, the rifle, a few tools. The sky was gray and heavy, the road little more than a vein of wet clay, winding toward the mountains. Mara sat on the bench beside him, hair pinned under a shawl, the girls bundled close. She didn't speak much. Neither did he. The wheels groaned through the mud, each turn carrying them deeper into the hills, away from the whispering townsfolk, away from Hank's wrath. Hours passed before she finally asked, "Where are we going?" "Old hunting cabin up by Wolf Creek," he said. Ain't much, but it's quiet. I built it back when I thought I'd have a family. She looked down at the baby in her arms. Guess you do again. He didn't answer, but something eased in his chest at the words. The climb grew steeper, the air colder. Pine replaced scrub. They stopped by a stream to rest the horses. Elias filled a canteen while Mara gathered kindling. When he turned, she was standing still, staring at her reflection in the water. He said the girls were cursed, she whispered. Said they'd die like the others. Elias stepped closer. Don't listen to dead men's words. He ain't dead. He will be if he follows. Their eyes met, the silence between them heavy but not cruel. She nodded, turning away. That night they reached the cabin. Small, stone chimney half collapsed, but still standing. Elias cleared out the mice, fixed the latch, got a fire going. The girls huddled close to the warmth. Mara watched him quietly, the flicker painting her face gold. You live out here alone a long time? She asked. Long enough to stop talking to people, he said. Started talking to the wind instead. Does it answer? Sometimes, he said. Mostly when I don't want it to. She smiled faintly the first time he'd seen it. The next days were hard but steady. He hunted rabbit, trapped beaver, cut wood. She cleaned, cooked what little they had, sang to the children in a voice soft as dawn. Slowly the cabin began to feel less like a refuge and more like a home, one patched together from hurt and need. But peace on the frontier was as fragile as glass. A week later, Mara woke to the baby burning with fever. The mountain air bit colder each night, and the blankets weren't enough. Rose's tiny chest rattled with each breath. Panic flickered in Mara's eyes. She's dying, she cried, voice breaking. Elias knelt beside her, touching the baby's forehead. Ain't dying. She's fighting. I'll fetch water, herbs, something to bring it down. He saddled the horse before she could protest and rode out under a sky bruised with snow. The wind tore at him, cutting through coat and bone. He followed the stream until he found wild willow and feverroot, remembering the old remedies his wife once swore by. By the time he turned back, the river had swollen with meltwater. The current roared. There was no bridge, only slick stones and the weight of his own determination. He pressed his heels into the horse. Come on, Scout, he muttered, and they plunged in. The cold hit like a hammer. Water surged over the saddle, numbing his hands. The horse stumbled once, nearly throwing him. He clung to the reins, teeth clenched, forcing them through inch by inch until they reached the far bank, drenched but alive. When he burst through the cabin door an hour later, Mara was weeping beside the cradle. The fire burned low. The baby's skin was pale, lips quivering with weak breath. Elias set the herbs boiling, mixed the bitter brew, and held the cup to her lips. Easy now, he said, voice rough. Don't quit on me. For a long while, nothing changed. Then, just before dawn, the baby coughed, whimpered, and drifted into sleep. The fever broke like the storm outside, sudden, quiet, leaving the world scrubbed clean. Mara sagged with relief, tears shining in the firelight. You saved her. Elias shook his head. She saved herself. I just brought the water. She reached for his hand, small and trembling. You didn't have to do any of this. Maybe I did, he said softly. Maybe it's the only thing keeping me from going hollow. Her eyes searched his, seeing the grief buried deep there, the graves on the hill, the ghosts he carried in silence. She understood then that he wasn't saving her out of pity. He was saving himself from the emptiness. The following morning dawned bright and clear. For the first time in weeks, the air smelled of pine and thawing earth. Mara stepped outside with the baby wrapped tight, watching the sun crest a ridge. Elias was already splitting wood, every swing sure and rhythmic. Clara sat nearby, playing with chips of bark, humming a tune her mother had taught her. Mara called out, You work like a man who don't know rest. He paused, leaned on the axe. Rest comes too close to stopping. And stopping ain't what I want. She smiled again, faint but real. Then maybe there's hope yet. By midday, the snow had melted enough for a rider's trail to show near the valley floor. Elias spotted it first through the spyglass. 5 men on horseback, Sheriff Starr glinting among them. His jaw clenched. "Damn fool went to the law," he muttered. Mara's face paled. "They'll say you took me." "They can say what they please," Elias said, already saddling the horse. "But they ain't taking you back." He rode halfway down the trail to meet them. The sheriff lifted a hand. "Carter, we got word you kidnapped Hank Lynn's wife and shot his partner dead." Elias sat tall in the saddle, rain still dripping from his hat brim. "I took in a woman he near killed, and his partner died shooting first." "That ain't how he told it," the sheriff said. "He's swearing out a warrant. Best thing you can do is come quiet." Elias's laugh was short and dry. "You ever see a quiet man get justice in this territory?" The sheriff didn't answer. The men behind him shifted uneasily. "Tell Hank Lynn," Elias said. "The next time he comes looking for what's his, he better bring a coffin with his name on it." He turned and rode back up the trail before they could answer. The posse followed a ways, then stopped at the first creek crossing. No one was eager to ride into the teeth of those hills. When he reached the cabin again, Mara was waiting at the door, the girls behind her. "You should have let me turn myself in," she said. "They'll hunt you now." Elias swung down from the saddle, mud splattering his boots. "You've been hunted long enough. Ain't your turn no more." She looked at him, voice trembling. "Why do you care so much?" He hesitated. The fire popped inside, and the smell of smoke drifted between them. "Because I know what it's like to lose everything worth holding and still have to keep walking." She stepped closer, tears glistening in her lashes. "Then maybe we keep walking together." He nodded once, unable to speak. That night, after the children slept, Elias sat by the fire whittling a piece of pine into something that might one day be a horse. Mara sat nearby, mending his shirt, needle flashing in the lamplight. Neither spoke much. The silence between them had grown comfortable, like two souls who found shelter the world never meant them to have. Outside, rain began again, gentler this time, steady as a heartbeat on the roof. Elias watched the flames dance, felt warmth creeping back into a heart he'd thought long gone to dust. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, the sheriff, the outlaw husband, or another storm. But for now the cabin felt alive with something he hadn't known in years. Hope, small and stubborn, flickered like the firelight. He reached for another piece of wood, carving slow, his voice a low murmur more to himself than her. "Ain't much peace in this world, but maybe there's enough for tonight." Mara looked up, eyes soft in the glow. "Enough for tonight," she echoed. The wind sighed through the pines outside, carrying the smell of wet earth and wood smoke. Somewhere far off, a wolf howled, a lonely sound, but not hopeless. Elias listened until it faded, then fed another log to fire and kept carving, his hand steady, his heart almost quiet. The storm rolled in from the east like a punishment. The sky bruised purple and gray, the air thick with a coming fury that felt personal. Elias Carter stood by the corral, rain gathering in the brim of his hat, watching the dark walls sweep toward the ranch. Beside him, Maria tightened the shawl around her shoulders, her face pale beneath the thunder's flicker. She held one of the twins close, the child's small fingers clinging to her dress as if sensing what was to come. It had been 3 weeks since the sheriff's riders left. 3 quiet weeks of slow rebuilding. The roof mended, the cattle rounded, a new start rising like a fragile shoot after a hard frost. But peace was a thing the frontier didn't give freely, and Elias had known better than to trust it. Trouble, he'd said once, always finds its way back home. The trouble came on 4 horses. They appeared from the ridgeline just as the storm broke, silhouettes black against lightning. Even before they drew close, Elias knew the shape of the man leading them. Clay Harlow, the same brute who'd beaten Maria half to death, the father of the girls he'd disowned. His men trailed behind, 2 drifters with rifles across their saddles, and a third man Elias didn't recognize, wearing a slick grin and a blood-red scarf. Maria froze when she saw them. "Elias," she whispered, voice trembling. "It's him." "I know." He handed her the baby and took his rifle from where it leaned by the fence. "Take the girls inside. Bolt the door. Don't open it unless you hear my voice." "Elias, you can't face him alone." I ain't alone, he said softly, eyes never leaving the riders. You're here. That's enough. The wind screamed as she hurried to the house, skirts whipping around her. Elias stepped into the yard, boots sinking into mud. Clay reined in 10 paces away, rain dripping from his hat brim. His grin was a broken thing. Well, I'll be damned, Clay drawled. Didn't figure you for the rescuing type, Carter. Thought you buried yourself with that wife of yours. Elias said nothing. He stood steady, the rifle low but ready. Clay's eyes flicked toward the house. She's in there, ain't she? My whore of a wife. Took my blood and ran to your pitying arms. Elias's voice was calm, almost gentle. You lost the right to call her, that the moment you raise a hand to her. Clay laughed, a wet, cruel sound swallowed by thunder. And what? You reckon you'll be her savior? I've seen the likes of you, Carter, men who think grief can be buried under someone else's pain. She'll break you same as she broke me. The rifle cocked. You best turn around, Clay. Elias said, ain't no redemption waiting for you here. The men behind Clay shifted, fingers brushing triggers. We ain't here for talking, one said. Clay smiled. No, we ain't. The yard exploded in gunfire. Elias dug behind the trough as bullets chewed through fence posts. Splinters and mud flew. He fired back, one clean shot that dropped the man in the red scarf. Lightning cracked overhead, painting the chaos in white and blue. Clay's other 2 men dismounted, firing from the shadows of the barn. The rain came harder, turning the ground to a churned mess of blood and water. Inside the house, Maria clutched both children close, whispering prayers in a language older than the plains. Each shot made the walls tremble. She pressed her forehead to the window frame, watching through the storm as Elias moved with grim precision, quiet, steady, every step deliberate. He wasn't fighting to live. He was fighting to end something that should have died long ago. A scream tore through the rain as another Clay's men fell. Then silence, only the storm. Clay stepped into the open, revolver drawn. His hat was gone, gray hair plastered to his skull. You always were a stubborn bastard, he shouted. You think this'll fix her? Fix you. Elias rose from behind the trough, face pale but steady. Nothing fixes a past, Clay. You just try to do better than it. They stood there, 2 men carved by loss, by choices that carved their souls hollow. The lightning flared once more and both fired. The sound split the world. Clay staggered, hand to his chest, eyes wide in disbelief. Elias lowered his rifle slowly. But Clay, somehow still moved, rage keeping him upright. He fired once, twice. The first shot tore through Elias's shoulder. The second hit dirt, inches from his boot. Clay fell to his knees, mouth full of rain. She was mine, he rasped. Elias stepped closer, voice low. She was never yours to break. Clay's gun slipped from his fingers. His body went still. Elias swayed, clutching his wound. The rain washed over him, cold and endless. From the house came the sound of a door crashing open. Maria running to the mud, skirts heavy, eyes wide with terror. She fell beside him, hands on his face. Elias, no, stay with me. I ain't going anywhere, he breathed, though blood ran down his sleeve like ink. It's done now. She pressed cloth to the wound, tears mixing with rain. You saved us. He shook his head faintly. You saved yourself, Maria. I just made sure no man stopped you from living. Thunder rolled again, fading into the distance. The storm was moving west, leaving behind a ranch littered with bodies and broken fences. But somehow, it felt quieter than before. Elias leaned against her, the smell of gunpowder still in the air. Your girls, he murmured. They need a home. Don't let the world make 'em hard. She looked at him through her tears. And you? You'll be here with us? He smiled faintly, eyes closing. If I can help it. By morning, the storm had passed. The plains shimmered with dew, the air fresh as new spring. Elias sat on the porch, arm bound tight, watching the girls chase a chicken across the yard. Maria hung laundry nearby, humming softly under her breath, a tune that didn't belong to this land, but made it feel less lonely. For the first time in years, the ranch didn't feel like a tomb. It felt alive. "You ever think about leaving this place?" she asked quietly. Elias looked out toward the horizon. "Used to. Now I reckon there's still some good to be done here." She smiled. "Maybe there's good to be found anywhere, if someone's willing to see it." He nodded, the weight in his chest easing a little. "World don't give much mercy, Maria. But sometimes it give a second chance." The girls laughed as one of them tumbled into mud, and Maria ran to help her up, scolding gently. Elias watched, something warm flickering in the hollow that grief had left behind. He'd lost much, too much, but in the ashes, he'd found something worth keeping. As the day wore on, riders passed on the trail beyond the fence, men tipping their hats, wordless respect for what had happened here. The sheriff came by, asked his questions, took his notes, and left the bodies buried by the creek. When he rode off, Elias and Maria stood side by side, watching the dust fade. "Maybe folks will talk," she said softly. "Let 'em," he replied. "Truth's between us and God." That night, the stars came out clear and sharp, brighter than Elias remembered. He sat by the fire with the twins asleep nearby, Maria mending a shirt by lamplight. The silence between them was easy now. After a while, she said, "Do you ever think your wife would mind all this?" He took a slow breath. "I think she'd be glad I stopped drinking my sorrow." Maria smiled faintly, eyes on the fire. "And me? You still think I'm worth Savon?" Elias looked at her, really looked. The bruises were fading. The scars would stay. But there was strength beneath them, a quiet light that the world hadn't managed to kill. "You ain't the one who needed Savon," he said. "We both were." The wind rattled the windows, soft and steady. Outside, the land stretched endless, waiting. The ranch would need rebuilding. The fences mended again. Life went on, as it always did. But now, for the first time in a long while, Elias Carter had something to build for. He leaned back, gaze on the fire. "World don't remember men like me," he said, almost to himself. "But maybe it'll remember what we did." Maria reached across the table, her hand finding his. "The girls will, and that's enough." He squeezed her hand gently, the flames flickering between them. "Yeah," he said, "that's enough." The night deepened, and the fire burned low, casting gold light over the faces of family the frontier had nearly destroyed, but hadn't. And out beyond the windows, where the storm had once howled, the land lay quiet and forgiving. The wind carried a whisper across the grass, like the ghost of an old prayer. Even the lonely can find their way home.